He never cheated, never left, but somewhere along the way, he disappeared anyway. He was 26 when he said, "I do." Now he's 51, and he whispers something he never imagined he'd say. "If I could go back, I'd walk away before the wedding. Not because I don't love her, but because I never learned how to love myself inside that marriage." No man walks into marriage thinking he'll regret it. No man stands at the altar expecting the quiet unraveling to come years later. But the truth is, man do regret it. They just don't say it out loud, because it sounds wrong, ungrateful, shameful even. But ask a man, years into his marriage, after the early intimacy fades, after the roles tighten, after the weight of providing becomes a quiet prison, and you'll hear it not in his words, but in his silences. Today, we break that silence. These are the unspoken regrets of married men. Not from hate, not from bitterness, but from wisdom, hard-earned, and long overdue. If you're married, or thinking about it, lean in. What you'll hear might save your peace, or at least name what you've been feeling for years. 1. He lost his autonomy. When he first entered marriage, being needed felt noble. Someone counted on him. Someone asked him to show up. It made him feel useful, chosen, trusted. But he didn't realize how subtly the shift would happen. At first, it was little things, letting her pick the restaurant, rescheduling time with friends. Then it became checking in before buying a tool, explaining why he stayed late at work, adjusting his schedule to fit hers until it became their schedule, not his. No one told him that freedom doesn't leave suddenly, it leaks away, plan by plan. Yes by yes, year by year. He doesn't blame her. She didn't demand control. He gave it, quietly in the name of compromise. Now, even a simple act, taking a walk without saying where he's going, can spark questions. Not out of malice, out of habit, and he feels it deep inside. Not anger, not resistance, just a dull ache. The man who once moved freely through life now lives in a curated rhythm, one that feels less like his and more like borrowed time. He regrets not seeing it sooner. That connection isn't supposed to cost sovereignty. That loving someone shouldn't mean surrendering yourself inch by inch. Autonomy isn't selfishness, it's identity. And when a man loses that, he doesn't just lose control, he loses himself. 2. He underestimated the emotional toll. He thought he was ready. He believed marriage would bring comfort, companionship, a safe place to rest. But no one warned him how exhausting it can be when intimacy turns into interrogation. It starts subtly. A comment about his tone, a cold silence after a disagreement, a joke that cuts too deep, a moment where he opens up, only to be dismissed or criticized. At first he shrugs it off. He's a man, he's strong, he can handle it. But strength doesn't stop erosion. Even stone crumbles when weathered long enough. She learns his soft spots, not to love them but to poke them. She knows when he's vulnerable. She knows which words tighten his throat, which glances shrink his chest, and what hurts most. She used to use that knowledge to nurture him. Now she uses it to win arguments. He feels it. The laughter leaves first, then his patience, then his willingness to speak at all. He starts choosing silence over conflict, numbness over vulnerability, detachment over openness, and slowly, his emotional world dries up, not in anger, but in quiet defeat. He regrets not protecting his peace sooner, not creating emotional boundaries, not realizing that love, without respect, becomes emotional labor, not emotional refuge. What he thought would be his soft place to land became the sharpest edge he ever slept beside. 3. He misses who he used to be. He remembers that guy, the one who ran 5 miles before work, who read books with curiosity, played music for no one but himself, and lost hours dreaming of something bigger. He didn't vanish overnight. He faded like color in a photo left in the sun. Now, he moves through life like a checklist. Gas the car, pay the bills, fix the leak, be agreeable. Don't argue. Keep things smooth. Keep her happy. Keep the peace. He's not depressed, but he's dimmer. When did he last make a choice that wasn't filtered through someone else's preference? When did he last laugh from the gut, not just the throat? He used to be driven by purpose. Now, he's driven by routine. He gave up things gradually. His hobbies, his solitude, his strange quirks. Each one seemed small. Each one seemed mature. But now he looks around and realizes he's still here, but he's hollowed out, and no one notices. Because he still smiles, still shows up, still functions. He doesn't blame her. She never asked him to disappear. But when you build a life around someone else's comfort, you eventually stop recognizing your own reflection. He misses the wildness, the unpredictability, The parts of himself that didn't need permission. He mourns the man he was becoming. Before he learned how to become what someone else needed. That's a secret regret most men never say out loud. Not because they can't, but because they don't know if anyone would even notice the man they lost was once extraordinary. 4. The house became hers. They say a man's home is his castle, but somewhere along the line, he became a guest in it. It started small. A few throw pillows, curtains he wouldn't have picked, a scent in every room, lavender, vanilla, something seasonal. He didn't object. He wanted her to feel comfortable. He liked seeing her happy. But one day, he looked around and realized there was nothing of him left. The bookshelves were filled with her novels, the pictures on the wall all from her side of the family. Even the kitchen stocked with ingredients he never uses. His presence in the home? Reduced to a corner in the basement, a recliner in the den. Maybe the garage if it hasn't been overtaken by storage bins and holiday decor. And it's not about furniture. It's about territory. He pays the mortgage, mows the lawn, fixes what breaks, but it doesn't feel like it's his anymore. It feels curated, like he's living in a place designed for someone else's comfort, and he just happens to be on the guest list. What he regrets isn't the decorations. It's the slow erasure of his identity in the one place that should have felt like his sanctuary. A man doesn't need dominance, but he does need a space where he doesn't have to ask permission to exist. And when that's gone, he starts to feel like a stranger in his own castle. 5. Money no longer feels like power. He always thought money would make things easier, that earning well would earn him respect, that providing would buy him peace. Instead, it bought expectations. She wants to travel, upgrade the kitchen, try that $400 facial treatment. And sure, he wants her happy, he wants to give. But slowly, it starts to feel like he doesn't own what he earns. He swipes the card and questions follow. He suggests saving and gets labeled cheap. He pauses on a big purchase, and she calls him controlling. At first, he thought he was overreacting. Maybe he was being too rigid. But then he noticed when she spent, it was self-care. When he asked for something, it was a waste. And that's when the shift became clear. Money wasn't a tool anymore. It was a scoreboard. He regrets never creating financial boundaries. Not to dominate, but to protect his sense of agency. Because when a man loses financial voice in the very household he funds, he doesn't feel generous. He feels used. Money doesn't buy happiness, but it should at least secure a man some dignity, some space, some say. Now, he no longer sees money as power. He sees it as pressure. And the very thing that once made him feel valuable now makes him feel invisible. 6. Intimacy became leverage. In the early days, closeness was spontaneous. A glance, a laugh, a shared moment that led to touch. It wasn't planned. It wasn't earned. It was natural. But over time, something shifted. He noticed it first in the hesitations, the "I'm tired" responses, the sudden coldness that had nothing to do with temperature. He told himself it was normal. Life gets busy. But deep down, he felt it. Physical connection was no longer a language of love. It was a negotiation. On good days, she might initiate. On bad days, she'd withdraw without a word. Soon, he began treating intimacy like a reward. If he cleaned the house, if he listened well, if he said all the right things, and even when it happened, it felt different. Mechanical, emotionally distant, like checking a box rather than sharing a bond. He doesn't want to think of his partner that way, but he can't ignore the pattern. It hurts not because of rejection, but because of what it represents. That love, once free and overflowing, now feels conditional. He regrets giving everything emotionally, financially, spiritually, only to feel like closeness became something he had to earn back, again and again. A man doesn't need passion every day, but he needs to feel wanted, not tolerated, not negotiated with, wanted. And when that want disappears, so does something vital in him. He didn't just lose physical connection, he lost the feeling of being chosen. 7. He feels emotionally alone even with someone in the room. To the outside world, he's lucky. He has a partner, a home, a shared life. He should feel supported. But no one sees the silence between the two wine glasses on the table. The way his sentences trail off because he knows they won't land right. The way he filters every thought, editing himself in real time to avoid setting off emotions he can't control. He wants to talk. He really does. But when he shares doubts, he's met with dismissiveness. When he speaks frustrations, he's accused of being too harsh. When he expresses sadness, she tells him, "You're overreacting." And when he's quiet, she says he's emotionally distant. So he bottles it, all of it. The stress, the fear, the hurt. And with every unspoken truth, the bottle gets heavier. He used to confide in her, that was the dream, a woman who'd know him fully. But somewhere along the years, that safe space shrank. Now, the walls of his emotional life are thick, because he's learned what he says can and will be used against him. And that creates a special kind of loneliness, being next to someone who doesn't see you anymore. He regrets not setting emotional boundaries, not demanding reciprocity in vulnerability, not making it clear that silence isn't peace, it's survival. Because being alone isn't the same as being unheard. And when you spend years in a house where you can't speak your truth, you start to forget what your voice sounds like. 8. The respect quietly disappeared. There was a time when she looked at him like he was a force, when his ideas were heard, his decision trusted, his presence enough. Now, he feels like an inconvenience. She cuts him off mid-sentence, mocks the way he mispronounces a word, rolls her eyes when he offers a solution. He's not asking to be worshipped. He doesn't need to be called a hero, but he does need to feel honored. Respect isn't just about tone, it's about posture. And somewhere along the line, hers shifted. She stopped leaning in when he spoke, stopped trusting his direction, started second-guessing everything he said, from parenting to parking. And the worst part? It didn't happen in a single argument. It eroded over years of passive disapproval, until all that remained was a low-grade contempt, hidden under daily routine. He regrets not noticing the moment it changed. The first joke that cut too deep, the first eye roll, the first time he laughed it off instead of calling it out. Now, respect has become something he hopes for, not something he receives. He stays calm, patient, grounded, but inside, something quietly fades every time she dismisses his voice, his thoughts, his worth. Love without respect becomes obligation, and obligation becomes resentment. He doesn't need her to clap when he walks in the room, but he needs her to see him, to speak to him like a man, not a burden, to remember the dignity behind his silence, because without that, love feels like labor, and marriage feels like a job he never gets paid for. 9. Divorce is riskier than misery. There are nights he stares at the ceiling, not because he's confused, but because he knows the truth, and can't afford to act on it. He's thought about leaving. Of course he has. Not out of spite, but survival. But the cost? It's staggering. He's seen good men lose half their savings, lose their homes, lose their children, not because they were unfit, but because the court never gave them a chance. So he does the math, not in dollars, but in dignity. How much silence can he endure for the sake of stability? How many more years of walking on eggshells? How much of himself can he lose and still be called a man? And the cruelest irony, everyone around him assumes he's lucky, married, settled, safe, but they don't know the weight of pretending to be okay. They don't know the prison built of paperwork, guilt, and financial fear. He regrets not protecting himself early, not setting legal boundaries, not speaking up when things first cracked. Now, misery feels safer than freedom, and that's a kind of heartbreak no one prepares you for. He's not weak. He's just trapped in a system that punishes honesty and rewards quiet compliance. And so he stays, not because he wants to, but because leaving costs more than his soul can afford. 10. He wishes he waited longer or built a stronger frame. He didn't marry out of clarity. He married out of chemistry, out of timing, out of the soft pressure of what's next. She was beautiful, kind, and most importantly, she chose him. But now, decades later, he realizes he never built the man he was supposed to be before becoming a husband. He hadn't explored his values, hadn't tested his purpose, hadn't set standards that protected his emotional life. So he did what many men do. He shaped himself around her. Her interests became his world. Her emotions became his weather. Her expectations became his default setting. He regrets that, not because she was bad, but because he wasn't ready. Marriage isn't the problem. Unprepared men are. He sees now that a man must first build his frame, a clear sense of who he is, what he stands for, and what he refuses to compromise. Without that frame, marriage becomes a mold, one he was never designed to fit. If he could go back, he wouldn't necessarily say no, but he would say, not yet. Not like this. Let me become first, then I'll choose. Not just accept, because choosing from strength creates a life, but choosing from need creates regret. So what do married men regret? Not always the vows, not the love, not the memories, but the erosion of self, of space, of quiet dignity. They regret the slow way identity is traded for harmony, the way truth is bottled for peace, the way freedom becomes currency spent to keep the home from shaking. They don't hate their wives. Many still love them. But they hate who they've had to become to survive the structure. He doesn't need a divorce to be free. He needs clarity. He needs to remember that silence isn't strength. That self-erasure isn't love. That a man who disappears in his marriage leaves a ghost in his own home. So if you're married or considering it, don't just ask if she's the right one. Ask if you are the man who can lead with presence, not performance. Ask if you've built a frame strong enough to hold the storm. And if you're already inside it, ask yourself, where did I go? And what would it take to return? If this resonated with something you've never dared to say out loud, leave a quiet comment below. I didn't regret the love. I regretted losing myself in it. Because sometimes, the most painful regret is not that we married the wrong person, but that we forgot to stay loyal to the right version of ourselves.